Okay, at Christmas time, we had the early chorus.
Yeah.
And then to sing them off, and then he gets a choir from the community.
Nice.
And all sorts of people come in from the church. We're having a replica of a New York show.
I saw that advertised. That's cool.
Well, I'll tell you this. The two main stars, and
Yeah.
and then the for her, it's the first guy.
You can sing. Wow.
If you never applied for
Underlying. Yeah.
Well, if your minister sings the liturgy, this guy is
Nice.
perfect. And we're this stuff going on. We keep trying new pieces. There's a guy at my team. His name is Robert. The first time this guy no.
Yeah.
He's preaching.
And talk to the choir. Nice.
This guy did 20 minutes.
Yeah.
One song. And we were at a like I sat with him afterwards. I had no idea.
He just does it.
When I started preaching, I needed something to go by.
And now he doesn't.
We're trying to decide where we're going to be warmest.
That's a gift. Wow. Nice. Well, I'm glad things are going well. I know you went through a rocky patch a few years now. So, yeah, it's good that it's good that you come through that.
But his legacy is all over.
Yeah.
All over our church. He has some wonderful ideas.
Yep. And you were happy about it. Yeah.
My expectations always said
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, how are you? Oh, well, we were sitting back.
I read sound.
Oh, we did.
I really try to say that.
Yeah.
So like here, that's the worst part of the church to echo. So I adjust down.
But if we're footloose and fancy, we know we come sit with
And
them.
they try to back me up.
I've never been there before. I'm like, oh, gosh. It sure and he was telling us that they have our church. Yeah. Oh, that's too bad. That was good. Yeah. Well, I'm glad.
No, he's pretty well.
Where did he go? Yeah.
It was on before. Oh, there it is. Right. Well, I see it's first happened. It happened often enough that I don't
You're alive.
back this way. Okay.
Yeah, but just like
Yes, everyone else. So, you guys, I'll be right back there. I might yell you by the way. I might yell you by the way. I'm yelling.
I already Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Yes, I'm sitting there inside. He's well, that's right, yes. He was in. I think it's September, he was
know that.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Oh my goodness, you are all absolutely stunning. You're just beautiful. I am so glad to see all of you. My name is Paige. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the rector of St. Peter's. And this is like a dream come true. This really is. There are people who we will say to those who are in younger generations, I got to meet. Stephanie Spellers is one of those people for me. I get to say I've known Stephanie. I have known Stephanie since 2001. Yeah.
When I was a brand new Episcopalian.
Yeah. And you are a blessing in my life. You really are. And we met because my associate, Calvin Sanborn, went to seminary with Stephanie, and they were best friends, still are best friends. And Stephanie presented Calvin for his ordination to the priesthood, which happened at St. George's in York Harbor, Maine. And that's when I met Stephanie. I know. And So if you ever heard me sing while preaching, Stephanie gave me permission to do that. And if you ever wonder, who put the wild idea in my mind about something like Barbie Sunday? It's Stephanie. Well, I'm so glad. Canon Stephanie Spellers is an incredible priest in the church. She is a visionary. She has served in some remarkable contexts, and those contexts have allowed her to really challenge the church to ask really big questions about what is essential, what really matters, as we seek to be the body of Christ in the world. And I know some of you have been Stephanie Spellers fans since Radical Welcome. Yeah, some of you have been Stephanie Spellers fans since Church Cracked Open, Broken. Church Cracked Open. And some of you heard all of our enthusiasm and you're like, I better go because my friends say this is going to be amazing. So Stephanie spent 9 years working on presiding Bishop Michael Curry's staff. And I know she was a blessing to him as well. And she spent the last year asking this question a lot of us have asked. Who here's been on a strategic planning committee or vestry or evangelism committee? Anyone here? Everyone here? And there's always this moment when we're trying to do our planning. And in fact, this happened 10 days ago at a strategic planning committee meeting of the Diocese of San Diego, when we have this moment where we say, okay, we just did a survey, we just did a thing, we tried to get some data. I wish we could just ask the people who aren't here. And then we get sad and we scratch our heads and we wonder, how would we ever be able to ask the people who aren't here? Well, Stephanie spent the last year asking the people who aren't in our pews really big, important questions. She spent a year doing deep and holy listening. And tonight we get the benefit of that. So I'm going to stop talking because you don't want to hear me. You want to hear from Canon Stephanie. Stephanie, welcome to St. Peter's. And welcome to the Diocese of San Diego.
You all have one of the best priests in this church right here, in this diocese and this congregation. You just do. Love you. Woo. So do you want to do this like asking me the questions, or should I just
So,
there's a mic right there.
do my best Phil Donahue.
Yeah, Oprah. Do Oprah.
Do Oprah. I wouldn't presume to do Oprah. You get a book and you get a book. And, right? Yeah. Okay. I know you will also have questions and you'll have a chance to ask questions, I promise. So I'm grateful that you wrote this book, and we're grateful that you wrote this book. I'm wondering what inspired you to research and write this book?
So there we go. The reasons that you were naming, Paige, I've sat at those same tables with folk trying to figure out what's happening out there and also what's happening in our own pews. I've looked at the figures, and data like this has scared the out of me. And maybe it scared you, and maybe you just seen it in your own lives. The fact that in the last 30 years, the Episcopal Church has lost almost 30% of our membership. And while that's dramatic, it's not as dramatic as some of our friends. You know, the American Baptist, 23%, but after that, it's, you know, the UCCs, which is the Congregationalists, United Church of Christ, the Presbyterians, 52 and 58% respectively, they've lost. And actually the Methodists, that's UMC down here, it says 31%. That's up to 2020. But if you add on when the Methodists broke apart in 2023, they've lost more than half of their membership as well. So I knew that these trends were out there. I had seen the data. I also knew that there are some broader changes afoot just in American life. And the truth is that in 1975, just a few years after I was born, about 86 or 87% of Americans were Christian, and only about 6% identified as non-religious. Then you keep going, you're like, okay, about, what's that, 25 years later, you got just 8% who said that they were non-religious. So 25 years, not that big a climb, and certainly not that much of a dip. Even to 2000, 86% of Americans said they were said that they were Christian. The next 25-year chunk, wow. In that period, and these are conservative numbers, these are the Gallup numbers, others are much more damning, honestly, for Christianity. The Gallup numbers will tell you that 62% of Americans now say that they are Christian, 28% are non-religious. It's actually closer to about 30 to 33% of Americans are non-religious. So it's this wave, this increase in people saying that they've opted out, or they were never religious to begin with. So all of that is out there, and I knew it. And I guess the last thing that I had heard and really wanted to dig into more deeply is this, the generational shift. And you don't have to look at this. I see people nodding. You know this. You know, for instance, that Generation Z, who were the ones born basically since 2000, Generation Z, if you add it up, 46% of them are non-religious. 42% of millennials are non-religious. And then it keeps, like silent generation, boomers, Gen X. I mean, you can just kind of see the direction this is going, and it doesn't take a few more of these bars until you get to who's Christian at all. So I wanted to dive into that. I wanted to see what is the systemic decline that we know in our gut is happening, but we've been scared to name because we feel guilty. Anybody feel guilty when you see this? I do. I feel like, wow, I should have been taking better care of my godchildren. I should have been watching out for my nieces and nephews. What as a priest, what did I do wrong? We feel shame. And as a result, we don't talk about what's going on and what's behind it. So I wanted to just give us the opportunity to say, what is up? And that's why I went around the country asking Millennial and Generation Z, so ages 18 to 44, asking them 4 questions. I'm going to show you these right now. These are the 4 questions that I went around asking, knowing like who else gets to do this. I had a sabbatical. I probably should have been sleeping, but instead I traveled America interviewing 45 non-religious young adults, asking them, just tell me about your spiritual journey, would you? And how and where do you experience the sacred? How and where do you experience community and belonging? And what would you tell churches if we were listening? Their answers to these questions, I was so blessed by, and we'll share more about what they said. But that's what gave life to, gave content and birth to Church Tomorrow.
Beautiful. And what did you learn about the why? The why people are opting out.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, like this was that moment of take the blinders off. Let's dig in. Let's figure it out. What's going on out there? Why are people saying no to church? And there are reasons that are kind of systemic and cultural, and there are reasons that are actually deeply personal. So I just want to share a little of both of those with you. First of all, the systemic reason why folks are saying no to church, no to traditional religion as a whole. One of them is that dropped baton. In other words, the failure of generational replacement. How many of you raised your kids in Sunday school? How many of those kids are now active in church? Yeah, that's the dropped baton. That we tried to do the handoff. You brought them to Sunday school, you did that. But something fell to the ground instead of them grabbing on and continuing to run with it. So why did the baton drop? Well, that's what gets us into these three cultural movers, if you will, these forces that are literally pushing people away from traditional religion. First of all, the force of privatization. Just say that word with me. Yes. Privatization simply means that, that technology has pushed us into these bubbles. And you've got a bubble, and you've got a bubble, and you've got one, and you've got one. Anybody have a cell phone? Hold up your cell phone. Hold it up. That's right. Yeah, that's your bubble. Anybody got a car? Right? How else did you get here? That's your bubble. And so we have all of these kind of individual self-autonomous pods that technology has created. And we don't need community. And even if we needed it, we'd have a hard time figuring out how to find it. That's especially true for younger generations. What's also true is that secularization, say that one with me. So secularization, and this is tricky because it's not that America is completely secular now. It's not. America is still one of the most religious, industrialized nations on the planet. But when you actually look at the influence of religion on most Americans' lives, it has decreased. We've become more secular. The domination of religion has lessened. And one of the reasons why is the religious right. The religious right has basically chased off the moderate and liberal Christians. There's so many Americans who don't want to be associated with what they see in the religious right. And so, and again, think about it. It's like, oh, wait, a lot of this decline started 1990s to 2000s. That tracks with the rise of the religious right. So as they've risen and become louder and louder and more dominated the American Christian landscape, people who are not a part of that religious ilk have just backed off and backed off. And we've gotten quieter and we've gotten quieter. Have you noticed? And we say, remember when the Episcopal Church used to be a church people listened to? One of the reasons why is because so many Episcopalians of standing disappeared, stopped wanting to be associated with Christianity. So when that happens, our churches dwindle. And we don't hand along the faith. And finally, pluralization. If I can say it, you can say it. Pluralization. And this is just what it sounds like. It's the fact that we are now in the spiritual marketplace with infinite choices. And so why would you choose one religious path when you could put together your own spiritual bento box of all the things that you like and that help you to get closer to what you understand to be the Spirit? But if everybody's doing that, we're kind of on our own. And that's where we find ourselves. So that's the bigger picture for why disaffiliation has become the story on, again, not just American religion, but American institutional life. Like, just name your institutions, the various civic clubs. You've maybe heard of the book Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. He tracks this as a trend that is just, it covers every part of American institutional community life. Churches are just one sphere, which kind of in a way helps us, like, if you feel, in fact, just do this with me. Like, bring your shoulders up a bit. Just go ahead and do that. Squeeze them up high, up high, up high, and then let them drop. That's what I hope you experience when you realize that the drop we've seen has affected every part of American institutional life. We didn't do something so wrong. We were swept up in a greater cultural movement. What's also true, though, is that there are individual, and especially among these nuns and duns, experiences that they have been having that have made it really hard for them to stick around with religion, if they ever had it at all. And here's some of those reasons. But I'm not going to skip that. And this came up when I asked them the first question, when I asked them to share about their spiritual journeys. This was actually kind of a way for me to get into the question of, so why don't you go to church? Or why is church just not valid for you anymore? And for a lot of folks, it's as simple as, I grew up religious, then I realized I didn't believe it anymore. Over and over again, these young nuns and duns confessed, and it was almost like a confession, but they were willing to tell me. They're like, I grew up learning these things, and then I realized that it didn't make sense to me and that it didn't have to, that I could stop pretending. So folks like Andy, who grew up Latino and Roman Catholic, Andy said to me, I had a hard time with a ghostly authoritarian figure that's finger wagging at me from a distance. And I really had a hard time with institutions and organized religion. I personally had to separate the church and spirituality because church is a man-made thing. He's not wrong. He went on. For people who really believe in their religion, I think it's great. It helps to instill good values, gives them community. But I like to think of myself as a very honest person. And I would feel like an imposter being all the way in with church. Comments like that I heard again and again and again. I also heard from people who said, I don't want to be a part of a church because churches hurt people. There are a lot of traumatized folk out there. And while some people have given church another chance, just as many have said, I can't go back in. Church equals hurtful. So they've stayed away. A lot of folks have said, I can't be pinned in like that. I don't like the labels. I don't like anybody telling me what I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to believe. And there are folk who grew up atheist, grew up agnostic, especially in those generations among Millennials and Generation Z. Their parents, a lot of them didn't raise them with anything at all. So to say, why don't you go to church anymore, means nothing because they were never there to begin with. There are also a lot of folks who will tell you and told me that church isn't worth my time. Ouch. And one of the reasons why actually gets into what I heard from them about question 2. Church isn't worth their time because they have all of these other ways of experiencing the sacred, many of which will be familiar to us. So for instance, do you connect, and I'm just asking you right here, do you connect with the sacred in the context of family, friends, and lovers? Raise your hand if that resonates for you. It does for them too. When you're being creative and embodied, dancing, singing, do you feel the spirit? Raise your hand if that resonates for you. Yeah. Engaging the natural world. This was huge. Come on. And they feel that too. They talk about God. They have so many names for the spirit. And a lot of it is what they're experiencing in nature. In silence. A lot of people have a beautiful, basically meditation practice or just being quiet. They hear God. Anybody else? Raise your hand. That silence is one of those spaces for you. They experience the sacred or the holy or the ultimate or meaning or mystery through other spiritual traditions. Lots of different pathways they're finding to get to God besides Christianity. Anybody else in here explored other religious traditions and brought those insights over to Christianity? I have. And finally, this was really interesting for a lot of people. They experience the sacred or the spiritual when they're paying attention in a fragmented world. In other words, when they figure out how to be in relationship with technology and their phones and all of that multiplicity, when they can distill all of that and get to some centered place in relation to the chaos. And there's a whole practice around that, and you can read about it. But does that sound familiar to you? It actually resonated for me some. I think especially for people whose lives are saturated with technology, being able to pay attention has become a spiritual practice. So there are so many ways that people are experiencing the holy outside of church, so many ways that they're forming community outside of church. They're doing it with chosen family, music, and the arts, running and yoga groups. They're doing it at work, finding community at work, and yes, in alternative worship communities. So with all of those options, for a lot of people, it's hard to justify why they would come into an institution as problematic as the church. And so they're not.
In your, now my battery's running out. This is a theme. This has been happening to me. Oh, wait, it's back. Hey, I muted it. Didn't know you could do that in person, not just on Zoom, huh? So one of the things I loved about how you shared the information from all of your sacred listening was reflecting on the prophecy of the dry bones from Ezekiel 37,
Yes.
the Valley of the Dry Bones. And you really distill the responses into 4 prophecies. And could you share about those?
Yes. So anybody familiar with that story of Ezekiel and the dry bones? Not just the foot bones connected to that. But it's this amazing story, and it's actually the story of a young adult, basically. I mean, a 30-year-old. That's how old Ezekiel was. He's 30 years old, and he had been exiled from his community. He was with Jews who were all in exile in Babylon. And so he was far from the temple, far from where he'd been told God would meet him. But then he ends up meeting God out by the riverbank. He ends up meeting God in that wild place beyond church, beyond the institution, beyond the temple. So I found it amazing actually to sit with that reading from Ezekiel and then to imagine what might be the prophecies from these young ones who were also outside, who were wandering far from where they had been told, and we've been told God would meet them. They're out there, but they're listening and they're experiencing. And they're also thinking a surprising amount about church, about the institution that they left or that's just beyond. These are some of the things they told me in response to that 4th question. And as Paige said, I kind of distilled these with help from some amazing conversation partners, distilled these into 4 prophecies. First prophecy, please, they said, would you stop making idols? You Christians and your idolatry. You idolize your institutions, you idolize your buildings, you idolize your rules. You've made idols of your histories, idols of your access, so many idols. And it means you can't move. And we don't see you able to move. You look stuck to us. Casper in New York told me about actually work that he's done with churches around buildings. And he said to me, those buildings are like a representation of respectability, power, and influence, even though churches don't really have that anymore. Now, that's a prophecy. He went on to say to me, you have a lot to offer, but it's probably not the way you think. Because of our idolatry of certain parts of our life and the things we have, we're missing out on what God is doing next. We're missing out on the opportunity to be flexible, generous with what we have and who we are. So they said, stop with the idolatry. They also said, go and meet the God who's waiting outside. They are already outside. They're talking to God while they're hiking. They're talking to God in yoga class. They're talking to God in all these places. And they issued an invitation and said, come meet us here. Come out and join us outside. You church folks, like, you've got wonderful buildings and wonderful things you're doing together, but there's also a lot going on out here. I met Juliana, who's a mom of 2, lives in Atlanta. She actually goes to church every now and then. She does. But she said, going back to nature, the ability to observe creation, to connect with something outside myself, it supports my health, well-being, my mental capacity in a different way than just sitting inside listening to a sermon. Sermons are sometimes less relatable and don't resonate with my own life like nature does. So they are inviting us to a place that actually we know something about too. So many of you raised your hands and said nature is one of the places where you experience the holy. Why can't we go outside and meet God? They'd love to see us try. Another thing that they said to me was, please, would you form loving, embodied communities that welcome our whole, authentic selves? Now, I heard this prophecy especially clearly from Stephanie, not me, although I agreed with her completely. When I asked Stephanie, what would you tell churches if we were really listening? What would your message be? And Stephanie said, you need to dance more. She was so clear that there is an unpredictable wisdom that comes in our bodies, and that there's also something that happens when we are just vulnerable together, when we are messy together, when we are authentic together. And the invitation from these nuns and duns is that we could set aside some of our propriety and correctness, especially around liturgy. I know I'm not talking to anybody in this room. My Episcopal brothers and sisters, that we've put so much of an emphasis on getting church right that we're not necessarily creating authentic communities of love. They are inviting us to do more of the latter, more of those communities of love. And finally, they said, and this was strong, read this one with me. Will the real Christians please stand up? These young ones are watching the rise of white Christo nationalism, and they are horrified and terrified. But they see us and feels to them like we've made our peace with it. Like we're watching Christianity burn. And we're busy trying to find some middle path that keeps everybody happy. And what I heard from them was time has run out. If you care about your Jesus, he is being blasphemed out there. If you care about real church, it is being emptied because those temples to greed and corruption are rising. So they said to me, and I heard this from Craig in Minnesota. He said, are you walking in Jesus' footsteps? Because he walked next to the homeless. He helped the prostitutes. He fed the hungry. That was Craig in Minnesota. Labria in Atlanta told me, Millennials and Gen Z, we want to pray and act. I grew up with generations of prayer, and that was it. What are we going to do to ignite the prayer? Ashley, who is an atheist, said to me that she had watched Marianne Buddy preach at National Cathedral. Y'all, an atheist watched that sermon, and cheered. But she also thought to herself, now wait a minute. And this is what Ashley said to me. We don't have a foundational text for atheism, but Christians have a book that you're supposed to follow. And your book literally says you've got to take care of people and don't step on the weak. This is an atheist quoting Jesus back to me. And then Ashley went on, so you can stand in front of Trump at church and tell him he's not following the principles that he purports to stand for. I don't have a book like that, but you Christians do. You have words that say you shouldn't let people freeze to death outside or get steamrolled for living in homeless encampments. So speak them. That's a prophecy. They are young, they are non-religious. They want to know if there is hope for this world. They want to know if anybody will speak for love. Anybody. And they want to know if we've forgotten how. Those are the prophecies. Just let that land.
So Stephanie, what surprised you the most? I'm guessing you probably had some ideas about what you would hear, and some of that may have been affirmed, but what surprised you about what these young adults and younger adults had to say?
Their honesty surprised me. Like what I just shared with you, I didn't expect to hear from them. Partly because I figured I'm a priest, they know I'm a priest. I wasn't sitting in these conversations with my collar on, but they knew who I was. I told them. They said, yes, I will talk to that priest, basically. And so I figured they were going to try to clean up their answers, give me whatever they thought I might want to hear. They didn't do that. They were primed. And what I realized is that they are desperate to have this kind of conversation. They are desperate for someone to take them seriously. They are desperate for someone not to just say, why weren't you at church? Can't you come with me to church just for Christmas, just for Easter? There's all that pressure maybe we put on them. But what we haven't done is say, what are you finding out there? Are you talking to God out there? I know you haven't come to church in 10 years since you were confirmed or whatever, but is there another way you're talking to God? Can you tell me about it? I'd love to hear. I might be blessed by what you're finding out there. That conversation, they were so ready for it. So that surprised me. Their openness, their honesty. And also I was surprised by how lonely they were. I figured they're figuring out how to make community. They've got all that technology. They've got all that social media. It's working. It's not. And they know it. They have words like parasocial relationships. I hadn't really even heard of that word before until all these 20-somethings are telling me, oh yeah, I have lots of friends on Instagram and I follow a lot of things on TikTok. Those are my parasocial relationships. In other words, it acts like a social relationship, but I know it's not. They know. They know. But what they haven't figured out is how to have the real ones. And they really want them. They are desperate for them. I heard people, first few interviews I kept hearing, and actually they were my West Coast interviews. So this was with your neighbors, your young neighbors. So many of them said to me, I worry I've forgotten how to be in relationship. I worry that I've forgotten how to be in community. So they may not want to be in church for the beliefs and everything else, But I got to tell you, they miss a lot of this community, but they also don't trust us. And so it's a tug of war for them. Desperately lonely, but they need authenticity and they don't trust that we'll be authentic. So those were some of the biggest surprises for me.
So they don't trust us. We've earned that.
Yeah.
What do you hope, having gathered these stories, having gathered these reflections and this wisdom and these prophecies, what do you hope church folk will do in response to taking in these words from our beloved nuns and duns?
When you sit with these prophecies the way that I had to, I have to say the hardest part of this book was how do we respond to the prophecies? Because I knew I couldn't just present them and then have everybody sit like, like that's not fair. That's not pastoral of me. But I really had to work, and I actually gathered a whole team of leaders that I know who work with nuns and duns. I spoke with folks like my friend Paige and others across the country to say, how would you respond to these prophecies? What could we be doing that we're not doing? What could we do more of? What could we test out? What does responding and taking these prophecies seriously look like? And spoiler, it's the last 4 chapters of the book. The last 4 chapters are the responses to their prophecies. And I'm just going to name them quickly. And they are that if the prophecy is stop making idols of your institutions, your buildings, your rules, your dogma, then a response that we can have is to say, wait a minute, our institutions can innovate and liberate. Our institutions can innovate and liberate. In other words, we can let go of the idolatry. We can let things change. We can let something go and allow something new to be born. We have that capacity. We are resurrection people. This is what God does. We can participate with God in that work of innovation and liberation. If the prophecy is go outside and meet God, then let's do that. How many of your churches during pandemic worshiped outside? How many of you still have a regular outdoor worship service? Exactly. How many of you actually kind of enjoyed the worship outside? I sure did. Those were amazing. We entered into a different way of relating with each other, didn't we? We were in our bodies in a different way. Everything, it was a wonderful and unique, but perhaps we didn't realize that it was a necessary part of how we could talk to God. So we can seek God beyond the walls. We can absolutely return to some of the practices that we already took up, that had us outside worshiping, engaging in spiritual life, walking labyrinths, having I dream of the day where we have, instead of complaining about all of those soccer practices that go on Sundays, go have Eucharist in the parking lot of the soccer field. Would somebody please do that? We don't have soccer fields in New York City, so I can't do that. But you must have a soccer field somewhere around here. Yeah, go. Like if you know that there's a soccer team that a critical mass of the kids from your church are now a part of, why can't you offer to go have Eucharist in that parking lot before or after that practice? Please, let's find ways of meeting folk outside the walls. We can dance. Let's dance. If the prophecy is please form these communities that are authentic and embodied, let's do that. Let's allow the Spirit to move us in our worship, move us in our community life, move us and change us in our discipleship. There's so many practical ways for us to dance with the Spirit. And finally, if the prophecy is that the real Christians need to stand up, will you just stand up with me right now? Just feel free to stand up right now. And just read that last line with me and just say it loud like you mean it. We are the Jesus movement. Say it again like presiding bishop, former Bishop Michael Curry was saying it right before you, that we are the Jesus movement. One more time. We are the Jesus movement. Amen. Have a seat. So we need to learn how to stand up and be bold in claiming that Christian identity, that identity in Christ. We need to be bold. I just had the best time with Charlotte and David and Chris Tumulty on the Faith to Go. Is that the name of it? The podcast. We did an interview for the podcast this morning, and we're talking about the Beatitudes. Let's be Beatitudes Christians. Let's live the life of Jesus out loud and make sure that if anybody wonders, what are you doing over there? Don't just be a nice person. Let them know that Jesus sent you. When you're feeding people, and I know you are, let folks know that I am here because Jesus said he would be here hungry, and I can't wait to see him. When you're helping people to get housing, when you're protecting immigrants and folk who are being traumatized and terrorized in this city and all over this land, do it because you see Jesus and say so. Because, one more time with me, we are the Jesus movement. So those are some of the ways that we could respond faithfully to the prophecies of these nuns and duns. If we do these things, there will be church tomorrow. If we do these things, we deserve to be a church tomorrow. Amen? Amen. Here we go. Whew. Yeah. Shake it up. Shake it up. Okay.
Whew. So I'm guessing you might have some questions. Yeah. And friends who are watching at home, you might have some questions. And Joseph is watching the live stream, and he's watching for your questions. So if you have one, feel free to put those questions in the comments. And thank you, Joseph, for being our missioner into the interwebs tonight. If you're watching this after the live event, I'm really sorry, but email your question to me, and we'll see if we can get in touch with Canon Stephanie and get you an answer back.
I bet you could.
Probably good. So, friends, questions. I will be there. I'll start with you, Hannah, then Deborah. I'm so glad you're here from Ramona, sister. Woo-hoo.
Thank you. Hi.
Tell us your name, and you're from Ramona, but who are you?
I'm Hannah Wilder. I'm at St. Mary's in Ramona.
Hannah.
Kathy Wilder is my wife, and it's her 50th birthday today, so happy birthday. And she loves you and your books, and you're such an inspiration. So thanks for being here with us. And I wrote,
hey, when we're done, you know what we have to do.
Sing.
No. We have to kick and stretch and kick.
Nice.
Saturday Night Live, when you turn 50, it's what you have to do. So please go on. I just did that.
I love you. No, this is great. So my question is, are we willing to let the church become smaller, poorer, or less central in order to become more faithful?
Well, and isn't that really the invitation that they're extending to us? You know, and I think especially in that question about idolatry, you know, that can we allow what we have pictured church being, can we allow that to change? Can we say that we may end up smaller, but wow, we'll be more faithful? Instead of trying to maintain a certain size, but then compromising the gospel, which I think is some of what's happening right now. I'm just going to say it. that the unwillingness to name the evil that is rampant in our nation by a lot of our churches, Episcopal and others, we're scared. We're scared that certain folk are going to leave our congregations. I'm like, you're willing to hold on to them at the expense of the gospel? What? So can we perhaps don't chase anybody off, not arguing for the sake of arguing, none of that, but being clear on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and then allowing folk to say, I'm in with Jesus and I want to follow, because he's invited all of us to be followers, incomplete and sinful followers, but followers nonetheless. And if somebody says, well, that's not my church, that's not my religion, a religion that watches out for the poor or feeds the hungry, or walks with the stranger and the refugee. If someone says, well, that doesn't sound like Christianity to me, this is me just saying, you are not obligated to say to them, well, there may be another Christianity, and so we're fine. We're not fine. It's not okay. It's actually costing people their lives now, because we made it okay. We made it okay for so much of what's happening in this country right now. We have built a tolerance for it. And now it's boiling so hot, and everybody's still shrugging. Some of that's on us as Christians. So can we get smaller, perhaps? Can we let go of some of our hold on money and access and all of that in order to be faithful to Jesus and to have communities that are authentic, communities of love? That's the choice. That's the choice before us. And it's the question around church tomorrow. Will there be a church tomorrow? If we're living for what you just described, Hannah, then yeah, we will be a church that Jesus recognizes. And that's what should matter most.
Deborah and then Nancy.
I'm concerned about my own church, not the others, mine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned about, have we lost our willingness to gather and connect? Because I know I've lost some friends at St. Peter's, and they won't come to church. They don't even answer my calls. They don't answer my texts.
Yeah.
And they used to be regulars.
Yep.
I'm concerned about that and why.
Yep.
They were so involved. They were leaders, and they don't come. They were hurt somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I was their friend, and I cannot bridge that.
Yeah.
And why? I ask myself, I don't have the answers to this, but I'm concerned about myself. I'm selfish. I want a community, a vibrant one, and I don't want to lose friends each year, to this post-pandemic, what do you call it? Malaise. I don't know. I think you've touched a lot of possible causes, but I think it's really our spiritual connection with each other. I've lost that with them, and I don't want to lose it for myself. So, I've been busy throughout this 6 years. I've been really busy, trying to go uphill, against the stream to make these things happen. And I get a lot more connections with people outside the church, unfortunately.
That's real.
Yeah, that's my experience.
So your name again? Deborah. Deborah, you have brought into the room a whole set of questions and a concern that really were part of why I wrote this book. When I submitted the original proposal, in fact, to church publishing, what I said to them was, I want to do a book where I talk to to nuns, duns, and pandemic dropouts. I had seen it at my own church, St. Bart's in New York City, that after pandemic, so many people just stopped coming. And a lot of them were leaders, a lot of them like, but that person was an anchor of the church. And now they're gone and they won't return calls. They won't look you in the eye when you're at the grocery store. And I just wondered, just like, why? What happened? And in the end, I couldn't do all of this because I only had a 3-month sabbatical. So I had to narrow it and then to the nuns and duns, and then narrow it further to these generations. But what I've learned is that some of the reasons that the younger nuns and duns were naming are true for a whole lot of other people. Basically, some of what's happened, not all, but some of what's happened is that there are folk who were sitting in the pews getting along. They were there because they loved the community, but they didn't necessarily believe. They maybe were going through the motions around community and didn't feel that connected, but they had been a part of all these committees and were so connected to people that they didn't feel like they could extract. But when pandemic came along and everybody was able to stay home, it's like we all got a permission slip. And they took theirs and said, this is my permission slip. I actually don't have to come back. So maybe they didn't believe, maybe they weren't finding that connection to God. Maybe they were finding it somewhere else and church was just more trouble than it was worth. Maybe they had served on one too many committees and they just wanted to breathe. Nobody knows what that feels like. There are a lot of reasons, and I would encourage you, like, again, what I found is that with a little structure, being able to go out and say, hi there, I'm doing some research to find out what's happening for people who are building lives, spiritual lives even, outside of church. Can I talk with you? And to ask it not in a way that says, where did you go? But that says, our hunch is that God is moving in so many ways, and we'd like to learn about that. So can I talk to you? That might be a way back into the conversation. That helps them to not feel guilty and like you're trying to get them back in, but also opens it up so that you can learn and perhaps even reestablish some of that relationship. So thank you for asking it.
Nancy, then Joey.
What did you mean about the evil within the church?
Gulp. I think I was speaking more about, white Christo-nationalism. So white Christo-nationalism is what I call white Christian nationalism. I refuse to call it Christian because there's nothing Christian about it. Amen? But white Christo-nationalism uses the symbols, the language, the buildings of Christianity, but to actually express and grow communities that are not rooted in Jesus and his love and his gospel. And those gatherings, those communities are growing like gangbusters. And that ethos, there are more, I wish I need to remember the name of the group, but there's a group that's kind of an umbrella, or not an umbrella, but it's a lot of folk who are in that kind of white Christian nationalist mold, follow a certain set of teachers, preachers. And there are more of them than the entirety of the main line put together, just in that crew. And this is the thing, is a lot of us don't realize it because we've kind of thought, that's a small thing. It's an extremist movement. Actually, we're the outliers increasingly. So that's, and it is an evil because it is a misrepresentation of the gospel that is actually being weaponized in order to kill and diminish the lives of the children of God, the people of this planet. So I say evil for that, a force that is doing the work of the evil one, that is Satan. Like I'm from the South. We just but I mean, but that, like, that's real. The powers and principalities of this world that want to have power and economic control and will do anything to maintain it, including kill, including erase. There's a reason, y'all. There's a reason why the administration went through all of the federal websites and removed the T from LGBT. Did you know they did that? Yeah. And it's because they did their research and figured out that transgendered people could actually be separated out, and that there were the normal gays and the normal lesbians who would actually line up on the side that would get them the money that they want and the comfort that they want. And they would be willing to literally erase their transgender people in order to have that access to power. Like, that's what's being enacted around us. And it's being enacted in the name of Jesus. And it is the opposite of Jesus. So that's what I mean about the evil. That is the evil that we have tolerated. We have allowed to say, well, they have a point. No, actually, they don't. If it's in the name of Jesus, no. No, you don't get to hurt people like that and then say Jesus told you to do it. No, 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 no. I'm done with it. Someone asked me after one of these talks, he's like, I want to know how you have reached the point where you have this fire in you. I'm like, are you watching? Where's your fire? You should be horrified. But we've made our peace over this long time of the fire being turned up and up and up and up. And we don't realize that the house is burning down. So that's what I mean when I say the evil. Does that, yeah.
Joey.
Thank you for asking. Yes. Well, no, that's one of the things. Turning Point. She was talking about. That's one of the movement leaders. Yeah, that organization. Yeah. Please.
Reverend Spellers, thank you so much.
Woo, woo. Let me move this way. That might help if I come over here.
Thank you so much.
Tell me your name.
My name's Joey.
Joey. Hey.
Now, I'm curious how many of these folks mentioned like the specific material circumstances of their life, because none of these really, like, you know, by way of quick explanation, 1980, my dad is a barber. We have a 2-story home, a car, and my mom gets to stay home. Nowadays, if somebody's a barber, and he was an immigrant. Nowadays, if somebody's a barber and they're an immigrant, they're hiding, they're working, they're living with 4 people, they're unmarried and can't afford children. They're living, you know, and they have 3 jobs.
Right.
What is it? Did anybody talk about that? That people's lives are very harried. Everybody feels precarious. It's another form of oppression that affects all oppressed groups just as much as anything. And I wonder what the church has to say about work life, student debt, healthcare, like how the church, like people aren't poor until they're on the street sometimes, I think, for the church. I don't think we see that. You don't even see the homeless. They're living in their cars. You know, you just see like the few that are in the most desperate straits. And so I just wonder, what does the church have to say to that? And if we don't have an answer for that, are we worth listening to?
You are quoting several of the people I spoke with, Joey. What you are saying is one of the reasons a number of people said they can't take church seriously. You know, woman in Minnesota, she writes grants for a living. Her husband is in a union. And she's like, I used to go to church, but when my husband had to go on strike and we were fighting for our lives, my church had nothing to say. My church was essentially with the owners. So she's like, I couldn't do it. They don't care about our lived experiences. They only want everybody to come in, smile, dress the right way, and say the right things. And she's like, life is too dire to be fake. And so she walked. And a number of other people said the same. So you are right on, Joey.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Muir. I'm with All Souls.
Awesome.
Going
Thank
back
you.
to the question of reaching out to people who don't have a good feeling about church or thoughts, particularly if they've been to church, whether came, for a few months, seemed to be fitting in well and then disappeared, or didn't really get back from the pandemic. Does the Episcopal Church have training for people within a parish to reach out to these people? I mean, you were speaking a moment ago about, hey, what's going on with you? People like, oh no, I don't want to discuss it. Like, how do you get around that? How do you just let them talk? How do you just get them to believe that you will just listen? So, because I can't do it on our own.
No, you can't. So everybody grab one of the cards that are at the center of your tables. If your table doesn't have any, I see a table that doesn't, you all are good? Here we go. Let's get these, our friends over there, make sure everybody's got one of these. So on the back of the card, it says, will there be church tomorrow only if we listen today? And then it says 4 questions for listening with nuns and duns. See that? So my publisher will not be happy with me, but I created a free study guide to go with this book. So please, get a copy of the book, I beg you, but also have a look at the free study guide. Because the last section of this free study guide is essentially kind of a very brief, very accessible process for running a listening campaign with nuns and duns in your own community. So I've actually designed what it would look like for you to have your own campaigns. I've been waiting for a diocese to take me up on it. Like if San Diego wanted to say, all right, we're going to do a campaign, and our churches, even if it's like 10 of our churches are going to do listening campaigns, and like each person on the church team will talk to 2 people, maybe just that. If you all got 10 churches to sign up for that, I would meet with you on Zoom and coach you. Can't believe I'm saying that. Like 2 sessions, but still, I would do that. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that, what can we do after we've read this, after we've heard these prophecies? I hope that you'll do the work around responding to the prophecies, innovating, liberating, going beyond the walls, dancing with the Spirit, discipleship, being the movement. I hope you'll listen. I hope you'll go out and listen. And so I created this small guide so that you can. So I used to do this for the whole church-wide body. So what I created is essentially what you would have found if I were still in that kind of job. But now I just do it because I love our church and I wanted to make that available. So it's at stephaniespellers.com/church-tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Penelope.
I think you have very subtly referred to megachurches in some other form. I can't quite remember how you phrased it. White Christian something.
White Christian nationalism.
Right.
Mm-hmm. White Christo nationalism. Yes.
So how does one compete with these megachurches who do sing and dance and they're fiery from the microphone to you, the audience, but they are filling these stadiums?
Yes. So again, I think that what our steps are to become as authentic and spirit-filled as possible. It's not about, maybe we should try out, cool new worship. If you do it because it's authentic for you. And here's the thing, for a lot of us, it is authentic. We enjoy dancing at a party. We enjoy listening to a guitar on the radio or whatever, but for some reason, racism, classism, when we get into church, we think that we can't listen to that kind of music or those instruments. Well, that's not done. Who said? Probably folk who had a stake in making sure, especially for the Episcopal Church. And these are just, I'm going to throw these phrases out there. And I'm just going to say things like white supremacy there. But that's what's going on. White supremacy and white domination is what has made the Episcopal Church tell ourselves that this is appropriate for Episcopalians. That is not. And when you look at what lands on the positive side and what lands on the negative side, the positive stuff is usually Anglo identified, white identified. It's usually upper class identified. When you look at the things we don't do, oh, surprise. It's usually the things that people of color do and that poor people do. That's not an accident. So those churches, those mega churches, what are they doing? They're leaving room to access the whole of where the Spirit is moving. That's a good thing. Why can't we? Part of what Paige was talking about, like the liturgies that we were creating when I was in seminary and when I was working at the cathedral in Boston and what you did with the Eucharist, as well as Barbie and John Williams and all of the other wonderful things happening here at St. Peter's. I would be a member of this church if I lived here. I just got to say. But part of what we're doing is saying that God is active in so many spheres. And God is big enough and strong enough that God can take whatever we want to bring. You bring that guitar. You bring those drums. You bring whatever it is that moves your soul. Bring that bombastic organ because it moves somebody's soul, but it's not the only thing that moves us. It's just not. But white supremacy told us it was the only appropriate thing to be moved by. And what they are telling us, what these nuns and duns are telling us, is go get free. Go get free. Episcopalians. So how do we don't need to compete with the mega churches and all of those, but I think we can learn from them. And one of the things we can learn is that an embodied community where people have opportunities for small group transformative experience will be a compelling community to be a part of. And a community where I am only passively watching and it's all just kind of at one speed and it's not embodied is an easy community for me to walk away from. And where all I do is worship, but I'm not in a small group that knows me and is invested in my growth into the full stature of Christ, that's an easier church to walk away from. I'm sorry. And so we can create those small group experiences. Anybody ever done Sacred Ground? I'm telling you, like so many people spoke about the power of Sacred Ground. It's like, it's the power of small groups. Small groups with the intention of transformation right at the heart of them. That is the secret of Sacred Ground. That's all. We can do that around discipleship. We can do that around creation care. You can have small groups of all kinds. EFM, any EFMers in the house? EFM, Education for Ministry, same thing. Small group experience gathered around transformation and discipleship. Those are sticky. That's a community that's hard to walk away from. How's that? Helpful? All right. Let's get two more. I see one and back there. And then we've got cookies and books and stuff. Please.
So first of all, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank
My
you.
fellow Durrani. Thank you.
I'm recognizing that I'm guessing it's probably too soon for you to have had any chance to do follow-up. I am struck that in the last week since the video of Bishop Hirschfield in New Hampshire standing outside, not in fine clerics, and saying, I've told my clergy to get their affairs in order. I've heard from more folks who know that I am involved in the Episcopal Church who want to know something about it than I have, well, a year ago today when Bishop Buddy preached, right? But have you had a chance to hear from anyone that you talked to about what they heard from Bishop Hirschfeld last week? And I don't know if everybody knows what I'm talking about, so I'll just ask that.
You can tell it.
So New England's really small. And one of the priests in New Hampshire is someone that was ordained out of my church in Southern Maine, Sue Poulin. And I called her last week and I said, was that actually Rob? Because, I mean, Rob Hirschfeld is a mild-mannered, preppy, he's a good guy. Awesome. He is a good guy and a good soul, but he is not us, he's not a rebel rouser. He's not, as Sue said, not prone to histrionics. That's not Rob. And so I kind of wondered, is this a deep fake? Like, is this actually Rob Hirschfeld? And so I called Sue Poulin and I said, Sue, was that actually Rob? And she said, yeah, but what you need to know is he actually told us to do that a year ago. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so the video that's gone viral is of Bishop Hirschfeld at a vigil that followed Renee Good's death. Murder. Thank you for giving me the courage to not be polite. I love you, Kathy. So there was a vigil in New Hampshire he attended, and he quoted to the crowd what he had said to his clergy a year before. And what he said was, I've told my clergy to get their affairs in order, to make sure that they have proper wills, because the time may come, and we may be there now, when we are called to place our bodies between the forces of this world and the most vulnerable. And that is the, like Bishop Buddy's sermon was the sermon heard around the world, that was the real heard around the world.
And it was all four of those.
It was all four of those.
Yes.
The Jesus. Yeah.
Yes.
And he referenced Jonathan Daniels, who some of you may know was from Keene, New Hampshire. And he was a seminarian who went to the Episcopal, I think it was Episcopal Theological School at the time, the school where both Stephanie and I spent some time. And he went south for the civil rights efforts, and he threw his body in front of a bullet for Ruby Sales, who also went to EDS when I was there. Was she there when you were there too?
No. She had finished.
And saved her life, teenage girl. And so he is one of our 20th century martyrs, and but from New Hampshire. So he referenced Jonathan Daniels. He referenced our Lord and the sacrifice that Jesus made, and it was a stunning piece. Yeah.
Paige, saying get your affairs in order is just exactly what Jesus said when he said, take up your cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can follow me, get your affairs in order.
Get ready. Get ready.
Yeah.
I believe we do have, did you have any more feedback that you're hearing chatter about the video?
Not necessarily. I've seen chatter online and stuff. After Marianne Buddy's sermon, I definitely, because I had just completed several interviews So a number of nuns and duns texted me and said, "Is she's one of yours, right?" And people referenced her during interviews as well. So I imagine that if I were on the road again right now, talking with nuns and duns, and actually I will be. This is interesting. I will be seeing some of the folk that I interviewed when I'm in is Atlanta next month. So I may find out from them. So, what do you think? But no, moments like that matter. But it also matters when we do that locally. You know, it matters that in New York, we gathered and in front of the federal courthouse and demanded the release of a college sophomore who had been kidnapped by ICE. Her mother is an Episcopal priest at the cathedral, Korean girl. So, she was just going in. She's a student at Swarthmore, and she was just going in for her just standard check-in to say, "Hey there, yep, I'm good. Just getting my student visa renewed." And coming out of the courthouse, ICE grabbed her. So, but we went down there, and the media, everybody's like, "Look at all these religious people down here." So we can also show up, and it does make a difference. Last question.
This is a question from the live stream from Martha from Grace San Marcos, who asks, do the nuns and duns have questions about Christian unity? For example, can we make a meaningful distinction between my operational theology and that of the Christo-nationalists?
Can you read that again? Sorry, Paige just
Okay, Martha from Grace San Marcos asks, do the nuns and duns have questions about Christian unity, church unity? For example, can we make a meaningful distinction between my operational theology and that of the Christo-nationalists?
This was an interesting point because a number of the nuns and duns with whom I spoke came out of more inclusive, more liberal churches. So they had grown up in the Episcopal Church, Methodist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, you name it. So on some level, some of them were even the children of clergy. So they knew that not all Christians are hateful. They knew that not all Christians, want to eliminate transgender people. They knew these things. And yet, because the religious right, white Christo-nationalism, is so loud and so dominant and so dangerous, they're not making a distinction. So, and I think the other side of this, and because we have become so quiet, they're not making a distinction. And so I think that's why they're putting that challenge to us is, you tell me that there's a different way of being Christian, but you're doing it so quietly that nobody knows. So maybe you're not really doing it. So I think that, yes, like we know, but that's not my Christianity. But if we're saying that just to each other in little circles, it's not penetrating the atmosphere. It's not changing the conversation. And what they are challenging us to do is to say it loud enough to change the conversations. And to say it strategically enough, as Bishop Rob did, to change the conversations. May the Spirit of the living God be with us whenever we do these things. Amen. Thank you, friends.
So friends, I want to say a few thank yous and then tell you what's next. Thank you to the St. Peter's hospitality team. You all are amazing. And to those friends not from St. Peter's whom they recruited. Thank you so much for your help. You're awesome. Thank you to the Diocese of San Diego. The Episcopal Diocese of San Diego is a co-sponsor tonight. So grateful, grateful, grateful.
Bishop Susan was so quick.
Yes.
Say, like when I reached out to Paige and Bishop Susan, she was so sorry that she couldn't be here and was so quick to be supportive. We go way back as well, and I have so much respect for her leadership, her vision, and I knew that this conversation is one that she supports and has in her own way encouraged for a number of years. So thank you to your bishop. Amen.
So who here brought books? Some of you brought your own books. Good. We will have an opportunity for Stephanie to sign those. We have books here, but we don't have enough for everybody. But there's this beautiful postcard-sized piece of paper on your table. And it's got instructions on how you can order your book. And what I propose is if you aren't amongst the first 10 at the table who want to buy a book, you can have Canon Stephanie sign this. And when you get your book, it can go on the inside. So you'll still have Stephanie's, you'll still have Stephanie's signature and a souvenir of your night with us. Stephanie, thank you. Like I said, this has been a dream come true. Help yourself to coffee and cookies and come on over.